This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, today we are talking about Black masculinity, hip-hop, manhood, and the challenges of consumption. I get worried when you laugh like that. I get really worried when you laugh like that.
Well, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because my argument, my position is that society likes to consume Black manhood, whether it's in sports like football or basketball or, theater. But once Black manhood speaks for itself or takes a knee, we like to denigrate it.
Oh, folks, you already know where we're headed here. You've already heard Reverend Irene's theses. She's already laid out her premise. Listen, before we head into this episode on the consumption of Black manhood in hip hop, let us thank each of our listeners and viewers. Thank you for listening to us on the various podcast apps and for watching the actual live recording of the podcast on our YouTube channel. We are grateful for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your reviews, and your comments.
Oh, indeed. And once again, from me, a tsunami of thanks to our listenership, and particularly thanks to folks who enjoyed our last episode, Why Did I Get Married? Now, I got a lot of comments and criticism about term limits in marriage, but I can say this, the consensus was this, whether you agree or disagree with me, you all said this, that a line of communication should always be open throughout your marriage. And I want to give a big thank you and shout out to our dynamic and talented team, Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls, because we wouldn't be able to do it without them. Right, Emmett?
That's right. You are absolutely 100% right on that. All right, let's head into episode 5.
In life, we hide the parts of ourselves we don't want the world to see. We lock them away. We tell them no. We banish them.
Back in 2019, Montero Lamar Hill, a.k.a. Lil Nas X, came to prominence with his huge hit, Old Town Road, which stayed at the top of the Billboard Hot 100 chart for an unprecedented 19 weeks. An out member of the LGBTQ community, Lil Nas X has recently been extremely upfront and personal about his life in his music and in his social media posts, which has upset folks like DaBaby and Boozy Badass. Irene, this young brother is doing something. Talk to us. What is he doing?
Yeah, I'm enjoying watching him evolve. I really am. And one of the things that I feel that the media has got him wrong is that the view of him is too topical. It's too myopic. They only see him in Black and queer terms here. But the interesting thing is that I see him as a transformative figure that disrupts all kinds of conventional norms. I see him transformative in the music industry, the way in which Madonna and Michael Jackson and Lady Gaga were. I mean, whether it's country western music, which was the province of, we consider just white men, he comes out with Old Country Road, whether it's hip hop, no matter what you think about it, giving the heteronormativity of it, with his song, My Name is Montero, or his wonderful commentary. My favorite is Who Goes to Prison, looking at the industrial prison complex, because so many LGBTQ people are in prison. And then his sales appeal here, with the Satan shoes, allegedly with a drop of human blood here. But that is just too narrow to really look at Little Nas. Nas is a good image to look at the way in which Black manhood in general is consumed. I call it the 4 C's, Emmett. It's the way it is constructed, the way it is castigated, the commercialization of it, and the consumption of Black manhood. And what it's done is that there is this competing masculinity within itself among the brothers, as well as the dominant culture. So when I think about the construction of it, I just want to go back to Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom, enslaved Black men, right? So you either have Uncle Tom, right? Okay, the way he's portrayed, or you got Nat Turner. So, or when you look at the civil rights movement, you either got Malcolm or you got or you got King. I call it the good Negro or the bad Negro here. Okay. And so now we get to hip hop. So we got, Lil Nas, and of course we got the Baby and Boozy Badass. and sure, this is not to ignore seriously that within a certain type of toxic Black masculinity, okay, and I say a particular type, that there isn't, that the Achilles tendon, that's in there is about homophobia. But we got to look at this beyond just what, what's that boy's name? Boozy Badass say? We got to look at the intentionality of the way in which these masculinities are intentionally pitted against each other.
Wow, you just said a whole lot. I'm tracking with you, and I actually agree with you. I think that Lil Nas X is doing something extremely profound. You used the word transformative. I think that this young brother is courageous because he's literally taking on an entire industry almost by himself. Now, he talks about the fact that he, loves, Frankie Ocean and Tyler, the Creator, who are also out, who are doing phenomenal things. But he also knows that he's going to receive the castigation and receive the hatred of some of these other artists. And he is hitting them back blow by blow with a little bit of levity and a lot of brilliance. I mean, he's extremely wise in how he uses his platform. Right. He's extremely wise in how he constructs his music. And more importantly, how he depicts his music and his sense of manhood, his sense of masculinity in his music videos.
And belonging in there. See, this is what I always say, Emmett. Now, if you're going to be a token, I don't always advise that, but if you're going to be a token, you ought to take it for a good ride. And so he has dipped into genres, musical genres, okay, that have been the province of a particular demographic group here. And what I like about that, whether you agree what he's doing is hip hop or not, or whether you agree that it's country western, he is inserting something to either explode the boundaries or expand them. But what he is saying here, this is what I feel like he is. He's like, when I say when there's the only Black person in the room, he's like a fly in a bowl of milk. Okay. You cannot not see what's up in there. You either accept it and let it blend in, or you just pluck it out.
You know what I appreciate about this young brother, and I keep calling him young brother. He's like 22 years old. I mean, and doing such phenomenal work as he's working through his own understanding of manhood, right? He's a product of a family that got divorced, in his earlier years. He lived with his mother and grandmother for a little bit, and then lived with his father, and then lived with his sister. And so he's really working this thing out. And then for him to come from a situation where he didn't really have much to now having a whole lot,
right?
He's really working this thing out. And, when we think about masculinity and manhood, it's not something that you learn between ages 13 and 18, and then all of a sudden you become a man, when you turn 18. I mean, here he is at 22, really working this thing out and trying to avail his voice to not only represent himself, but represent a whole lot of folks who have been ostracized, who have been disenfranchised, and who have been castigated as outside of their own human embodied experience.
So that's why I say that he's beyond just, his stuff is beyond just LGBTQ. I like the format that he uses, whether you agree with me or not. But one of the things about hip hop, as well as country western, we used to call country western the white man's blues, right? And hip hop, has become universalized in so many ways. But he uses it becomes a lens, whether we like what the Baby is saying or Little Nas, it becomes a lens into the psyche and the psychology of Black men. It becomes in many ways their public pulpit. And what we hear in hip hop is those political and social jeremiads that we hear from, the pulpit. And also we hear vulnerability as well as vulgarity. Okay. In terms of the emotional and sexual challenges and confusions and misguidedness. Sure, when we just look at the fact that there always are gatekeepers, right? Because when Little Nas came out with Old Country Road, certain white people lost their
Yeah.
righteous mind
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's why I said I don't want, see, and so of course, he comes out with perceived this hip hop song. And again, a certain group, you can expect, who think they're the gatekeepers, lose their minds too. So that's my point. So why, when it happens within a Black context, it's demonized, but when it happens in a white context, like country music, it's like, well, we're growing, we're evolving. But the point, but so that's what I say, that we get in the see, we get caught up into the argument of, and it runs a particular trope. Black people are more homophobic than any other people in the world, because whatever we do, it's always pathologized, right? But the point about it is that we got to look at what I call some of the historical antecedents, the intentionality to put us against each other, the infighting, to not look at the bigger issue, which is the commercialization and the consumption of Black manhood and Black bodies, unless they speak. Now, if they just shut up and dribble, if one Fox News person told
Oh
LeBron
my goodness.
James, if we just shut up and dribble, then it's okay.
I mean, when you invoke the whole country western piece, I mean, let's just, for historic reasons, let's invoke the name of Charlie Pride and also, Ray Charles, who had phenomenal careers, and were able to cross over these genres. I mean, one of Ray Charles's best-selling albums was his album that he did with some country stuff on. But the
the
point
boldness, I want to just say the boldness though about Lil Nas, he didn't cross over. He went straight there. See, he went straight there, as opposed to, see, by the time that, Ray Charles, he can do anything he wants to do. Stevie wants to do it. But I just love just want to capitalize on his boldness to just do it.
Yeah, but when you talk about consumption, these musical genres are not, they are marketing terms. Like, you don't, there is no such thing as a country western middle C, a jazz middle C, a classical middle C. A middle C is a middle C. So these are opportunities for marketers to be able to brand things based on these presuppositions and these stereotypes. And so exactly what you're saying, Lil Nas X does not fit the stereotype, and yet he's extremely successful in these places where he's engaging in, which challenges this whole notion of consumption. And the point that you're saying, that Lil Nas shows up and his style and his sensibility of manhood and Black masculinity doesn't fit the mold.
Right.
And so now he's a problem.
Right.
And yet, this generation.
Right. A problem
in this generation.
A cash cow. But that's the thing.
Well, problem in cash cow. But this generation is much more savvy and has much more ethical sense in terms of how they leverage their dollars than previous generations. And this generation, current generation, is like, look, we value and appreciate what he's saying, and we're going to roll with him.
Amen. That's true. Absolutely.
Listen, this is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We're going to take a quick break here. We'll be right back.
A lot of hip hop and rap music is built around me showing how I got more money than you. I can disrespect you and you can't do nothing about it. I'm going to talk about you and punk you. And ironically, that actually shows the vulnerability that you feel.
This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We're back. The voice you just heard was that of hip-hop scholar, former President Barack Obama, at a town hall on masculinity and hip-hop culture with Golden State Warriors superstar Steph Curry. That was back in February 19, 2019. Earlier, you heard a clip from Lil Nas X's opening on his track Montero, Call Me By Your Name, from March 2021. Irene, what do you think about what this hip-hop scholar, our former president, Barack Obama, what was he talking about? What was he throwing out there? Were you picking it up?
No, listen. So first of all, it does raise these questions, sort of what type of cultural products are being consumed by our young brothers, right? And why and how do they consume them? But but if you listen to the tape closely, he ends on, but it shows that they're vulnerable. So he has taken a particular, what I call trope, a trope about hip hop that it's only speaking about a particular, disenfranchised group. And one of the things I said earlier is that hip hop really offers a lens into the psyche and the psychology of young Black boys. And one of the things I like about hip hop, no matter what you think about it and what they're saying, is that they're writing and they're speaking themselves into existence in a society that Ralph Ellison said called the invisible man. And look, Frantz Fanon, a psychologist, says we wear the mask. And if what Little Nas talks about is like we hide ourselves. So the point is that he misses the point. Yes, I am criticizing the former president, but he misses the point in understanding the pathology, what he would say of the behavior. But I don't necessarily say it's a pathology. It's the output of an invisible group trying to be heard by any means necessary.
You better go on with that. He not only missed the point and the mark, he was way off the target. I mean, hip hop culture, and let me say it this way, hip hop culture was about empowering those who were disenfranchised. It was about giving voice to the voiceless. It's about, giving opportunities to those who were dispossessed and who had been, shunned. So in many ways, this stereotype or this trope that is being permeated and being consumed is a false reading on what hip hop culture really is. And it's a false reading on the young people who innovated, who created, and who operated from a sense of entrepreneurialism, not only back in the late 60s and early 70s, but even to today. And so the notion of this, and the notion of the toxicity of how we superimpose masculinity and superimpose manhood and superimpose femininity and superimpose womanhood onto individuals is absolutely insane and tremendously ridiculous.
I love you for this, Emmett, because of who wants to go up against Barack Obama? But the question is that, and I need to say this as politely as I can say it, is that when it comes to the Black community and Black men, he's always been putting us down. I remember, you may not remember this, I hope you do, but he was at Morehouse graduation and he was talking to brothers wearing gold chains and baggy pants. This is the jewel crown of Black academic scholarship. MLK comes out of there. Yeah. And so again, I think he misses the boat because of two things. One, he doesn't come out of that generation. He doesn't come out of that kind of struggle, even though he talks about in his book about being invisible and having to wear the mask here. And I think again that he buys too much into the way the commercialization and the consumption of hip hop has been front and center, at the same time being a cash cow on the backs of, as you say, the disenfranchised, the dispossessed, and the damned.
Yeah, and if we're focused on pants, baggy pants, pants hanging down, and we're focused on language, then we're missing actually what is stimulating that. We're missing the embodied experience of these young people who are using that perhaps to get your attention so that you can ask them a different level of a question.
That's right.
And I think that's the tension and the tragedy when we superimpose our own stereotypes and these kind of fictitious straw men and straw women, things, in terms of this is what masculinity is, this is what manhood is. And
yeah. I agree with you. It reminds me, it becomes solidified because when it comes from a bully pulpit like the president, it's said and done. It's going to be hard to correct that misinformation. I'll give you a classic example, Emmett. So Reagan comes out with this whole notion of welfare queen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, you look at me. Okay. You look at Kyla. Kyla is one of our wonderful producers here. Okay. Brilliant journalist. Comes out of an HBCU. Middle class family. Okay. Welfare queen. Okay. I mean, really. So the point is that once that becomes solidified in dominant culture, it now becomes consumed and it becomes a cash cow, whether it is true or not. But the thing is this though. And so it bothered me that, everybody's looking at the fact that, Little Nas is wearing a dress suit. Well, Billy Porter came out with that. Okay. Okay. What is the boy? Bowie. What is the first? David Bowie.
David Bowie.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, look, a lot of folks were, playing with those boundaries here. But the thing is is when we consume it, and it's when we commercialize that, and what bothers me about it is that while you have brothers infighting in that way, it harms Black women and little girls.
Yeah.
And so let me tell you ways that it hurts me. So it hurts me when I see this, as certainly when you hear someone like Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1965 comes out with the emasculating Black woman, the myth of the Black, matriarchy, mm-hmm. or something like, the way they put Black men against Black women, not understanding here that we have always been working in synergy. If you don't get in our business as much as we can, mm-hmm. To uplift the entire race, not just one particular aspect of it, because we have these people in our communities here. But, I have to say here, capitalism, and, again, once you give dollars to it, it's amazing how people will sell their souls, whether they're on the right side of justice or on the wrong side of justice. But I just think that what it does, it doesn't allow men as well as Black women be their authentic self. So I love the fact that, in Little Nas's opening of Montero, he says, "This is my name. But, I've been hiding." And the truth is, we all have been hiding because what? We are all controlled, whether we're cognizant of it, Emmett, or not, of the white gaze, the whole idea of acceptability.
I mean, you invoked the name Daniel Moynihan, who had a historic report that was so just idiotic.
And damaging.
Damaging. I mean, he really, defaced the whole notion of the Black family and tried to insinuate that poverty and all of the crises within inner city or urban environments was because of the failure of the Black family, which was absolute foolishness, statistically, and foolishness in terms of economically. And so there's been so much data that is shown. And, so for instance, back to your welfare queen analogy, people still believe that there are more people on federal assistance, right, AFDC, than there are white people. And that's absolutely statistically been proven that right. There are more white people on the federal assistance. So the fact that individuals with power and platform get to make these ludicrous statements, and then they're believed by many people, even though they're not factual and they're untrue. And so right. I love what Little Nas X is doing. He's right. saying, this is my life. He's saying, right. This is my story. He's saying, mm-hmm. This is how I see the world. And you can't refute that. I mean, that's so right. This is important for us. Irene, I know you have a final word. Let's listen to you today.
Okay. Well, we have been discussing in this episode, as you can tell, about the infighting and what happens to any group of people. But I want you to remember this Yoruba proverb that says, if we stand tall, it's because we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us. My African ancestors taught us how to make it in broken places, and they have also taught us how to make a way out of no way. They have taught us that we must lift as we climb, and that we have to do this in relationship to one another. The Kwanzaa principle, Ujima, meaning unity, must take root in our self-understanding of who we are and what we decide to be, both as a people, as a community, and as a country. And the understanding of the interconnectedness between himself and the individual, and himself and the country. African historian John Mobutu said this, "I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am." The infighting that goes on because of race, religion, sexual orientation, just to name a few, and all the symptoms of what is all a symptom of what is broken within us. So I ask this in the face of our own self-respect, to end polarization and to heal ourselves and the world as well. The infighting must stop. The distrust must stop. The competitiveness must stop. We must cure ourselves of our indifference to each other's struggle and oppression. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or perish together as fools, as Martin Luther King said. Or in other words, we need to turn to each other and not on each other. Ashe.
Ashe.
And amen.
Amen. That was good. All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is from Reverend Price's son and musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Elizabeth O'Brien, May He, Devin Robbins, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrevduppod@gmail.com. We'll be back